Ladies and gentlemen, we are back in the headset on the mic for MLW Wiffleball episode number 15. I'm back after a quick little 1-week hiatus. Was not feeling very well last week, could not record the series preview, but we are back here as we are going to be previewing one of the great MLW rivals, more specifically the great American League rivalry between the Pacific Predators and Western Wildcats. Every single time these two teams meet, something crazy happens, whether it's in the postseason or even just a regular season slate 2 meeting like this. So if you're new here, these series previews, we're going to go over our projected starting lineups, our starting pitching matchups, where things are going to happen, our pre-series standings check-in, see where the Preds and the Cats stand, and then how the rest of the league looks around the standings. We're going to look into storylines, plus what's up for grabs for these two teams, and then my official prediction at the end of the episode. But before we do that, we're going to do a quick series recap of the last series that happened, which was the Metro Magic and Coastal Cobras. Definitely a lot to talk about in that one. So before we get into that series recap, we do a quick segment called Around the League, which is just news that have happened around MLW. Nothing yet, really. I think it was confirmed that MLW is going back to Vermont for the mini MLB series for the third year in a row. I'm not sure what the matchup is. I forgot, but I'm pretty sure it was promised that that MLW is going back to Vermont. So that's really the only news around the league. The Miami series just happened last weekend between the Mallards and Diamondbacks. I'm sure it went great. Of course, not know the outcome to that until the video comes out. And then Brooklyn is coming up as well. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's jump into the series recap between the Metro Magic and Coastal Cobras. All right, in a matchup that was set to have a lot of kind of postseason implications here, all the way in slate 2, with the 0-3 Magic and 1-2 Cobras set up for some gritty wiffle ball. As the loser of this series would be in a lot of trouble, but how it turned out, how both teams kind of got something out of this series. So the Magic ended up taking it 2-1. The Magic won games 1 and 3 off of RJ Walgate on the mound, but the Cobras did look pretty solid in game 2. They scored in every single game. There was a lot of offense totally combined. But we're going to break through it game by game and then go into some analysis. So game 1, Metro Magic take it 6-3. The Magic plate 6 runs off one hit. We'll talk about that later, but 6 runs off one singular hit. And the Cobras kind of complete opposite story. They score 3 runs off 6 hits, and the Cobras also record an error in the book. But for the Magic, their starting pitcher, RJ Walgate, went out, did give up 3 earned runs, but got the win on the mound, his first on the year, and sat down 6 from strikeouts. The only hit for the Magic went to Jordan Curdy, who finished 1 for 2 this game, as they had a total of 9 walks in game 1. As for the Cobras, their Cy Young back in 2022. Brendan Baranowski back on the mound. He looked okay in the series that the Cobras played against the... Who do they play first? Slate, I can't remember. I'm blanking on it right now, but Brendan Baranowski gets back the start for game 1. He does record the loss. This is probably the worst outing I've seen of Brendan Baranowski's career. Definitely, it's got to be the worst one since he won the Cy Young back in 2022. Baranowski recorded the loss. He did have 5 strikeouts, but walked 9 batters, gave up 6 runs off 1 Magic hit. So really just lost control. I don't know if it was super windy or anything, but Cobras, their offense had 6 hits in game 1. Brendan Baranowski helped himself out at the plate. He went 2 for 4 with a home run. Andy Durant, trio of hits. He goes 3 for 4. And then Drew Davis has a home run himself as he goes 1 for 4. So Magic win game 1 6-3. Going into game 2, starting pitching matchup is Chris Baranowski for the Cobras against Trevor Bonham for the Magic. Chris Baranowski, he was the sub-in for the Cobras since Caden Irwin was unavailable this series. So this was the first start of his career. He had made an appearance on the mound before, but this is Chris Baranowski's first start. The Cobras win game 2 pretty dominantly by a score of 10-2. The Cobras have 10 runs off 7 hits, 1 error. Magic 2 runs off 1 base knock and 1 error. For the Cobras, their starter, Chris Baranowski, records the win, gets 6 strikeouts, but he had a lot of help from the offense. Brendan Zerlag out of nowhere goes 2 for 3 with a home run. Andy Durand once again goes 2 for 4 with a home run. So he has 5 hits in the first 2 games of the series. And then Sean Flynn as well with a pair of hits himself. There's one more, but those are the only 3 that showed up in the final graphic for this game. So 7 hits. We know it came from 4 players for the Cobras. Really a team win. Good pitching, only 2 runs off 1 earned hit from Chris Baranowski, but then the Cobras offense just explodes off Trevor Bonham. As Bonham was that game 2 starter for the Magic, he records his loss. I think he's 0 for 2 this season on the mound. 4 strikeouts, 4 walks. Then the only hit for the Magic belonged to Grant Miller, who had his first home run of the year in game number 5 of the season. So Cobras tied the series going into game number 3. The starters do not come back. RJ Walgate gets a start for the Magic, but Chris Baranowski gets a start in game 3, which is a really good call from Drew Davis. I was very scared that he was going to start himself, but Chris gets the call up after getting that win in game 2. But ultimately, the Magic end up dominating game 3 as they win it 6-1. Magic have 6 runs off 4 hits. Cobras 1 run off 1 hit. For the Magic, RJ Walgate bounces back after starting 0 for 2. He gets 2 wins on the mound this series. He has 8 strikeouts in game 3. Then on offense, he had a lot of help with 4 hits for the Magic. 1 belonged to Grant Miller, who had his second home run of the season. 2 belonged to Jordan Curdy, and then 1 to Trevor Bonham for their 4 hits. For the Cobras, Chris Baranowski kind of had that evening out start on the mound after throwing a pretty good game, or game 2. He then comes back, gives up 6 runs, gives up 4 hits, walks 7, and only strikes out 4 in his loss. And the one hit for the Cobras came in as an relief hitter, like a just they just need a pinch hitter. Sorry, it's skipping my mind. Justin Esch, the rookie, came in as a pinch hitter. His first and only at bat of the day. He leaves the yard, goes deep for a home run. The one Cobras hit on that game, and there, of course, 1 run scored. So Magic win the rubber match 6-1. They end up taking the series 2-1. Let's jump into some analysis. Okay, so jumping into some series analysis here. Um, it's gonna be a little negative kind of in the scope of things for the Magic. But I think when we're done and the year's over and we look back on it, I think this is gonna be a massive series win for them. So um since the Magic got this huge series win, it's good to see them, winning series, but the team, in my mind, just still overall feels very different from last year. So, every time I talk about the Magic and whether they're winning or losing games, it all goes back to me saying, Jack Agner put together a team that has a very simple game plan of RJ Walgate pitching well and Grant Miller hitting well. And if you were to set it up and pose a question, say, hey, if RJ Walgate gets 2 wins on the mound and Grant Miller hits 2 home runs, do they win the series? The odds are very likely yes, and that is exactly what happened this series. So, top to bottom, though, I mean, looking at the stats, definitely offensively, the Cobras out hit them a lot this series. The total hits this series were Cobras with 14, Magic with 6. So I think a big part to this team is that they're still lacking very consistent role players. And believe it or not, 3 of their 6 hits this series were by Jordan Curdy, and the other 2 were by Grant Miller. So this team is very dependent on, and Miller. So his 2 hits, both were home runs. I'm not sure what it looked like. I can't remember the actual home runs themselves, but one of them was in game 2, which they lost. And the other one was in game 3, when the Magic won that. So obviously, I can say Jordan Curry. They don't have good role players, but Jordan Curry did play pretty well. But, um, you know, they they get the win. They take 2 out of 3. But if in my mind the Cobras are still like the worst team in the league, with that expectation for the defending champs playing the worst team in the league, I'm still a little unimpressed by this team. So, granted, they are 2-4, uh, but I mean, I think the big problem that's going to show up for the Magic that they didn't have last season was they are going to very quickly, in my opinion, need to go to the bullpen a lot more this year. So I think it's really important that in this first half that they really exercise all of their bullpen options. Because I mean, calling spade a spade, Trevor Bonham has not been himself, and he was, I think there was a time last season where R.J. Walgate and Trevor Bonham were the best 1-2 punch um, in the league for pitching, like pitching series. You do not want to face Walgate for 2 games and then Bonham in the middle. Um, and I mean, even, kind of dissecting that game plan, that works really well because RJ, you got Walgate in game 1, who's this tall, 6'5", big movement guy, and then you have Bonham, who's 2 feet shorter than him, completely changes these hitters' eye levels, throws them off. Then they got to go back to Walgate for game 3. So, I think Trevor Bonham not playing great is a really big tell to this team struggling early on at being at 2-4. So they've, talking back about that bullpen, they have gone to Grant Miller a little bit. I think that's good. I think they keep him as a very viable option in the arm or in the bullpen, but I don't hate trying to bring in one more. I have no idea who would it be. I don't know if AJ Ackerman has that in him. I know Agner doesn't. I'm guessing Jordan Curdy can't really pitch. Um, so I don't really know. I guess it kind of has to come down to AJ Ackerman, but if they don't have that, 3 arms is still a good bullpen because that gives you that kind of your starters and the relief. But honestly, if I'm going into the next series for the Magic, which is against the Mallards, which is going to be huge for them, I don't know if I'm starting Bonham in game 2. I think we have him on standby as a relief guy in game 2, but I wouldn't hate the idea of starting Grant Miller in game 2 against the Mallards because they're definitely going to need uh, their best stuff if they want to compete against that team. But overall, for the Magic, at the end of the year, it's 2 wins, and that's 2 wins in the book. But this team, it still has glaring problems to fix, and there's a beauty about the sport of baseball and that travels down to wiffle ball is how kind of beautifully unpredictable this sport really is. So I mean, I think the Magic are one of these teams where like they can get swept any given day by any team. Um, we saw it happening against the Eagles, and yes, Eagles are one of the best teams in the league, but I still think that the Magic don't have the most reliable game plan to at least take them back to back. So their next series is against the Mallards. Like I said, they're going to need a lot of their best stuff that series if they want to try to win another one and be definitely right back in contention. But a series loss, um, they could not be looking so hot. But I think the fate of the Magic is the American League. I'm super excited to watch how the American League shapes up this year, just because of how um, there's 4 teams, and I could see any 4 of them missing out on the postseason. Very opposite to the National League. So, um, we'll see. Magic missing out on the postseason. I see it happening, and then again, I don't. So, um, yeah. All right. Let's talk about the Cobras. So, I'm trying to remind myself that they're still 2-4, and they're still not that good. But if I'm going to be completely honest, I have loved what I've seen from the Cobras this year. Um, After all the moves they made, my expectations were literally in the dirt for them. And from that level of how little I expected this team, they have exceeded those very low expectations. Um, Before we get too high, bring it down to earth. The Cobras pitching is going to be a downfall to this team. It is really not good. Uh, I would argue they have the worst bullpen in the league. I'd have to think about that before just ripping that comment. Um, but I mean, talking about the struggling bullpen, like Baron, he just cannot get back to his 2022 form. And we saw his brother Chris. We saw him pitch just because Caden was out. Um, we've seen him get a win, but we've also saw him put up 6 runs and kind of lose control and get beat in that game 3. So, with Brendan and Chris, those brothers going back, Caden Irwin, in my mind, is right now their game 1 starter for their next series. But who knows how consistent he'll hold out for the rest of the year. But moving along to this offense, it is secretly really good. And a lot of it comes down to the production of Andy Durand and how he is blowing my mind. I'm reading his numbers. Andy Durand, 1,036 OPS, 333 average, 2 home runs, 9 RBIs, which is 40% of the team's RBIs belong to Andy Durand, and a 619 slug. After taking a year off from the league and not sniffing a wiffle ball bat or a wiffle ball field for a year, Durand was, in his career, a player that strikes out a lot, and he still does have a pretty high strikeout number this year. But I was expecting him to, really struggle this year. But he's been killer, man. I mean, a true 1,000+ OPS. He has plenty of at bats to back it up. Really solid batting average. A 619 slug is insane. But even outside of Durand, the Cobras have 5 different hitters with home runs, which is an awesome stat for them. When I was listening to the Pipe It Up podcast, I always disagreed with the idea of a vibe tribe just getting wins, but it's working, man. They hit a home run and the entire bench is up there. They're cheering. So overall, if the Cobras end up figuring out how to pitch, we might have the newest dark horse in MLW. Their next series is against the Western Wildcats in Brooklyn, New York. So out of state series for them. See how they perform. It is their third special series in Cobra's history. But overall, Cobra's offense, I love. Wait till they figure out pitching. Snakes could be dangerous. But next on MLW Vault, let's go into the series preview between the Pacific Predators and Western Wildcats. What's next?